Tejeda, a sports night producer, if I can say it. And let's start with the first game, first things first, South Carolina, UConn. We all agree on this one, Nick, but I mean, UConn's a good team too, right?
Yeah, I actually have UConn winning by a score of 24-21. While South Carolina is a good team, they had a tough run in the SEC East, and they lost big, but they did lose big to Florida, Tennessee, and Arkansas. UConn has a lot going for them this year. They lost 5 games by a total of 15 points, lost to Cincinnati by only 2, Westfall by only 4, and Pitt by only 3 points. They did beat Notre Dame and South Florida. They have a lot going for them with the loss of cornerback Jasper Howard in October, and this team has a strong dual running back system, so I think they have a great chance to take over this game.
Yeah, I won't lie. The reason I picked South Carolina was their tremendous showing against Clemson, especially giving up the opening kickoff for a touchdown to C.J. Spiller after they kicked it. They had been offsides on the first one, and then coming back and winning convincingly. But why did you guys go with North Carolina? We'll start with you. Or South Carolina, rather. I'll start with you, David.
I would just have to say because of the more polished team. They've gone through a heavier gauntlet of teams. They have the more well-known coach in Steve Spurrier, who I think has the opportunity to light up a UConn defense. I think South Carolina wins this game pretty handily.
And that Notre Dame game, I mean, I guess you give them credit for going to South Bend and winning, but of course Notre Dame was Notre Dame this past season.
Yeah, UConn, they lost a lot of their games very close, but when South Carolina lost the games, they were to very good teams. All 5 of their teams are bowl teams, including several to top 10 teams even. So even though South Carolina might have a fantastic record, that's not their fault playing in the SEC. So I think South Carolina is a much better team, especially with that convincing win over Clemson.
All right, well, an opportunity for Nick to make us all look stupid in that game for sure. Let's move on to the Liberty Bowl, Nick. Arkansas, East Carolina. We're divided. Scott and David went with East Carolina. Myself and yourself went with Arkansas. Why'd you go with the Razorbacks and everyone's favorite former Michigan quarterback, Ryan Mallett?
Well, as you said, they do have Ryan Mallett, and they have a strong running back duo in Broderick Green and Michael Smith. Also, Bobby Petrino has been to the Liberty Bowl and won it convincingly. Also, they have Adrian Davis as their defensive end to lead the strong defense. East Carolina did upset Houston, in their final game. So they are coming off that big momentum shift right there. But Arkansas has been too strong this entire season. They've had some tough losses. We saw that great game against Georgia, some other losses here and there in the SEC, but they're going to come out very fired up to play in this game against East Carolina.
So, guys, you went with Conference USA, second in a row champs. Of course, last year East Carolina had that crazy, beat Virginia Tech, and I forget what other highly ranked team they beat in the non-conference schedule. But why did you go with the Purple Pirates of East Carolina, David?
I think it all starts under center with Patrick Pinckney. I believe he's a 3-year starter, and he's a quarterback that I don't think Arkansas has seen the likes of so far this year, even though they do play in the SEC. He's run-first quarterback, but he also has the threat to pass, and he's just extremely talented for a college quarterback. I think he's a more consistent version of Juice Williams, and that's what you'll see in this game.
Yeah, I think it's East Carolina's a pretty good team. Their last 7 games, they've lost 1 of those games, and that loss was to Virginia Tech, so they're going to come in as a very hot team. Arkansas, meanwhile, they've had a pretty wild season. They've had some really good games. They played Florida really close. They played LSU very close. They've had some really bad games too, and Ryan Mallett, as good as he can be, also has the ability to be really bad. So consistency, momentum, all going East Carolina's way. I pick East Carolina.
All right, well, I'm glad you got in a little dig there at Ryan Mallett. I think we were all trying to. And then finally, we wrap up your group of bowls, Nick, with 2 games with local interest. The Alamo Bowl between Michigan State and Texas Tech, and then the GMAC Bowl between Central Michigan and Troy. Of course, we all picked Central, all picked against Michigan State, picking Texas Tech. Of course, there's some hanky-panky going on with that Michigan State football program, I hear.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Michigan State can even field a full team after that big fight in early November. They did lose 3 starters, including B.J. Cunningham, Mark Dell, and Chris Rucker. So with an already weak defensive back lineup they have, it'll be interesting to see how Mike Leach, with his strong offensive mindset, will be able to pick apart the Michigan State defense. Taylor Potts has come in for for Leach and done a great job filling the shoes of Graham Harrell. Also going into the Central Michigan game that we see right here, they have Dan Lefevre, had an incredible year thus far, is projected to be one of the top quarterbacks taken in this upcoming NFL draft, and I think they're going to have way too much offensive power for the Trojans of Troy. So it'll be an interesting game. The only thing the Trojans of Troy do have is a sense of home field advantage in this game.
That's right. They're an Alabama team playing in Mobile, Alabama, guys. But I think we talked about games that are mismatches, but I think, at least on my end, these picks are rather quick on the draw on these ones, and I'm fairly confident in them. Do you share similar confidence, David?
I would have to say so. I mean, you look at Central Michigan's offense with Lefevre and Antonio Brown. He's one of the most explosive players in all of college football, regardless of whether or not he plays in the MAC. So I think you see that team, and they're going to run all over Troy. And also Michigan State, their defense is completely depleted. Texas Tech, they've got an offense, obviously.
Mike Leach, all he does is coach offense. Right. Well, we have to thank Nick of Sports Night. Check out that show, too, another great WOLV Sports production. And now we have to move on to our fourth group of bowls. We're going to bring in Andy Baena, a producer of You Say Maize, I Say Blue, in just a second. But take a look at this grouping of games as we march forward in the holiday season. The games get more interesting. Independence, Champ Sports, Humanitarian, Texas, and Holiday will be discussed with Andy Baena. Also, the Eagle Bank Bowl, which is in limbo right now, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But take a look at these matchups. There's some interesting ones. Georgia, Texas A&M, Miami playing Wisconsin. I guess we're not real high on Wisconsin there. Bowling Green, Idaho. Navy takes on Missouri in the Texas Bowl. Kind of surprising that we all went with Navy there. And of course, also we have the Arizona-Nebraska game in the always interesting Holiday Bowl. We'll talk more about what's happened previously in the Holiday Bowl in just a second. But Andy, let's start with the Eagle Bank Bowl because I don't mention it here in our graphics. What is going on, and why do they not have? Why is UCLA 1 foot in, 1 foot out on this bowl game?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a difficult situation for UCLA. However, NBC decided to make another bowl and add it onto the schedule in the Army-Navy game. So the case here is that Army's sitting at 5-6. And, they just don't know if they're going to have the 6 wins required to make a bowl. However, essentially, if they win and they're in, then UCLA will be the odd person out against Temple. With that being said, surprisingly enough, I'm picking Temple. As much as, I don't know if you guys really feel that way, Temple has not made it to a bowl in 30 years. In fact, they haven't had a winning season in 20. Now, similar to many of this country's biggest financial services firms, too big to fail, I think that Temple's story is too sweet to fail. So therefore, I'm picking Temple to win this game.
Oh, I forgot. You stole my thunder. I needed to make a GMAC joke because, of course, they took TARP funds and are still sponsoring a bowl, which is head-scratching. Mr. Ross School of Business, Scott is as well. Okay, well, let's back up now, Andy, and let's talk about the Independence Bowl. You went with Texas A&M, a team that has definitely been down versus their previous, their tradition, at least, speaks of. I was the only one that picked Georgia, but why were you so high on Texas A&M?
Well, I mean, this was still a close decision on my part. However, I just think Georgia's going to have a tough time coming up with the defensive game plan after losing defensive coordinator Willie Martinez, as well as 2 of his defensive assistants, to stop Gerard Taylor. Now, I don't know if you guys have kept up with his stats this year. He has a 140.69 passer rating on the season. And in fact, A&M's offense ranks in the top 25 in scoring, rushing, passing, and total offense. So, I mean, I just don't think Georgia's going to be able to come up with a game plan to stop this A&M offense. Not to mention, I don't think Joey Cox is going to pull it out. He's had some turnover problems earlier in the season. They did have that big victory over Georgia Tech. It was pretty huge in Atlanta, but I'm going with A&M. Defense, not good enough.
Well, the only thing, since I have to defend myself on this one, 30-24, Georgia over Georgia Tech in the last game of the year. Of course, they do lose those coaches, as Andy mentioned, but I thought that spoke volumes about how much this team has underachieved and the potential it has, perhaps, to beat this Texas A&M team in the Independence Bowl. I cannot speak. Champ Sports Bowl, guys. Last year, Michigan State played here. We all picked Miami, Florida. David, no love for Brett Bielema, even though he may be Notre Dame's next coach?
I just can't say I have any love for Wisconsin. I mean, they've lost to all the good teams they've played. They don't play hard non-conference schedule, and Miami's just pretty